Hello, Accounting 1 kiddos, and welcome to our second lesson in Chapter 3, where we're going to talk about some transactions that affect both prepaid insurance and then also supplies. So our two learning objectives are to analyze and record cash transactions using source documents, and then also analyze and record transactions for when we buy and pay on account. So our first transaction says that we paid cash for insurance, $900, our check number 2. So the two accounts that we have that are affected here, again, are our prepaid insurance, which is an asset going up with a debit, and then also our cash, which is also an asset, which is decreasing with a credit. So I just want to point out a couple of things as a reminder from section 1 that as we look over here, you can see this is the third line of our journal. So we do not need to have our month and year again. This is just a continuation of what we did in 3.1. So as we look here, we put our date, which is the 3rd. We don't need the month and the year again. And our debit goes first. So we record our debit amount in the general debit column. Prepaid insurance is our account title, goes in, and then because that is not a special amount column, we put it in our general debit for $900. Our credit is for cash, so we place our $900 amount in our special amount column for cash credit, $900. And then the fourth thing is to not forget to write our source document. Again, check is our source document, so we abbreviate that as C number 2. Pretty simple, nothing too strenuous there. So let's take a look at our next one. So we bought supplies on account. So it says on January 5th, we bought supplies on account from Canyon Office Supplies for $220, memorandum number 1. So this one is going to be a little bit different. First, let's talk about which of our accounts are affected. So first off, we have supplies. Supplies is an asset and it is increasing with a debit. And then we also have our accounts payable, which is a liability. That is also increasing, except that increases with a credit of $220. Now, what this looks like in our journal actually is on two different lines. And the reason being, if you look here, we do not have anything that affects sales or cash. So our special amount columns do not get used at all, which means that we have to have a separate line for each one of our different accounts. So you can see we start as we normally would on the 5th. Again, because this is not the first line of our journal, we only need to include the day. We do not need to include the month or the year. And then, as I stated before, we always start with our debit. So our debit amount is for supplies. And so we write our account title supplies, and then we put our general debit column of $220. Our credit also is in the general amount column. So we write accounts payable, and that's this ACCTS and PAY is simply the abbreviation for accounts payable. You can feel free to use that if you want to, especially when you're doing your workbook if you don't have enough room to write out accounts payable. And then you do need to include Canyon Office Supplies, though, because we need to know what specific accounts payable account that it's going to. And then we put our 220 credit over here. And last but not least, we remember to put our source document in. So this is the first time that we're working with a memorandum. So this is an M. M1 is listed there. That's our buying of supplies on account. So this one will take up 2 lines. That's fine. I just want you to note that you do not need to put the date again, and you do not need to put the source document again. If you were to do that again, put a 5 and an M1, what that is going to look like then is that we're missing a part of our transaction over here. With these two being empty, that signifies that this entire thing right here is one transaction. Because if you just had this, it would just be a debit, and you're missing a credit then. And then it looks like we made an error. So we leave the document number and the date empty on that second line of the transaction. Our next one is that we paid cash on account. So this is where it says on January 9th, we paid cash on account to Canyon Office Supplies for $100, check number 3. So what's happening, remember, is we owed Canyon Office Supplies. We had bought supplies from them on account, which means we did not pay for it right away. A few days later, we send a check to them. So what's happening is that our accounts payable, Canyon Office Supplies, is decreasing with a debit. Okay, we no longer owe them that money, so our liability is going down. And then our cash is also going down with a credit. So the reason we put accounts payable first is because accounts payable gets the debit in this transaction. So we always, again, want to think about putting our debit first. So let's look at this in our journal. Again, because we're not on the first line of the journal, we do not need to put our month and year. So we just put the 9th as the date. In that goes. We put our debit first, which is accounts payable, Canyon Office Supplies. Again, that's a debit of $100. Our credit goes back to our special amount column. So this is, we're working with cash again. So we just come over to our cash credit column and put the $100 in. You do not need to write cash over here. If you do that, you're simply making an extra step for yourself. Accountants just don't do that. We use our special amount columns as listed over here in columns 3, 4, and 5. And then lastly, we put in our source document number, which is check number 3. So C3 goes up in our document number, and that is our journalizing our transaction for paying cash on account. So I just want you to remember that if you record any amount in the general debit or general credit column, you have to make sure that you have written an account title in the account title column. If you don't, we don't know where to put that general debit and general credit column. And I know we haven't talked about posting yet. That's coming up very shortly in chapter 4, but it is essential that if you put something in the general debit or general credit column, you have to have something in the account title. Okay, just a friendly reminder to make sure you're doing that. So you can head over to our 3-2 work together in MindTap, and then you have your 3-2 on your own and your 3-2 application to do.